So thanks very much for joining us. So we have 20 minutes. We're going to try and get through relatively quickly some of the things that we're excited about here in Europe. But just to get started, maybe if you could each introduce your organizations and the stage you invest at, where you invest. So maybe let's start with you, Anne.
I'm a CEO, co-founder of Amadeus. We're 20 years old. We've invested in 130 companies, $1 billion raised, and we've been doing deep tech for as long as it's ever been called that.
Entrepreneur First is a new kind of investor that creates companies from scratch by finding the world's most ambitious technical talent before they have a company and then taking them on a journey, typically lasting 6 months to go from pre-company to having a company. And we, as I say, particularly focus on people with a deep technology background who can build, we hope, some breakthrough technology.
Yeah, I'm Matt Arnold, and I work for OSI, which is an organization focused on spinning research out of Oxford University. We raised £600 million to do so, and we're only 2 years old, but we've created 43 companies thus far. So on a bit of a tear that front. Awesome.
And so, Matt, OSI is relatively early in the stage. You're quite closely connected with Oxford University, right, in this case. And then EF, you guys work very closely with universities as well. Could you contrast your two approaches? Because at first glance, it could seem fairly similar.
Yeah, so I'll take that one. So I think the way to think about it is universities are not just an amorphous blob. There's, at one end, you've got tenured professors using public funding to build multi-billion-dollar facilities to do deep science. At the other end, you've got students who are learning new skills. So what we at OSI focus on is taking the research outputs of the staff of the university. Quite often when the professor themselves doesn't want to run a company, we'll take that and we'll wrap a commercial team around it and we'll build a company out of that. I think Matt would say that they're kind of operating at the other end of the spectrum on the talent rather than the IP.
Yeah, so I think our premise is not about IP as such. Our premise is that the world is actually missing out on some of its best founders because it's not yet the case that all the world's most ambitious people think, oh, I must be a founder when I graduate or kind of later in their career. Our job is to find those people based on the skills that they have and the ambitions they have and help them go through that journey rather than spinning out a specific piece of IP.
Makes sense. And is it, what is deep tech to you guys? I mean, it's a bit of a flavor of the month term, but at least it's starting to capture, core concepts. How do you look at deep tech? Is it something that you focus on, specialize in? Is it incidental? Maybe Anne?
I mean, yes, you're right. It has become more coined recently. I think that the way we think about it is that there is a technology differentiation in the underlying business, which offers two things that are important to creating businesses. One is differentiation from other approaches. So you're not in a Me Too land grab kind of business model, which can be deployed very effectively, but is really about capital as opposed to design. And we're much more interested in differentiated design. And then the second aspect of having that foundation is that you can get operating leverage out of it. As you scale, you get better gross margins. As you scale, you can go to more countries, more regions, more products. So you've got two characteristics that are really fundamental to entrepreneurs and the ability to build a big business. Is you're differentiated and you can scale quickly.
Yeah, I think we would have a very similar view. When we talk about deep tech, we mean that the technology that the company is based on is not commodity. It's something that has been built in-house. It's different from what's out there. Ideally, it's only just become possible. It's not something that someone is saying, oh, I saw that this can be done and now I'm going to take the same tech and apply it to a different problem. It's actually that the technology in that company has only just become possible.
Makes sense.
Yeah, and I think you could say that some of our companies, most of our companies embody that because it literally has only just become possible because they've only just written the paper on it.
Right.
Sometimes they'll come to us before they even go and distribute the paper. And I think that is a great basis for building a company around it because it's much harder for people to follow you.
Makes sense. So it's deep science as well as deep tech. It could be something genetics. It could be,
Yeah, I mean, materials science, chemistry. There's all sorts of stuff. Some fantastic opportunities at the moment.
And it's generally believed now, and people look at DeepMind, which was maybe one of the first companies to use the deep word, and maybe even got this fashionable, but that they were at the center of this and got some of this going. But are they a bit of an exception? Are you seeing a lot of deep tech or so-called deep tech companies? And I know you guys at EF, for example. Maybe let's start with you. You've seen at least one exit already.
Yeah, I think DeepMind were not the exception, but the catalyst. And I think actually it was just been. It's hard to overstate the positive impact that the DeepMind story, I think, has had, at least within the machine learning world, for two reasons. One, I think it shows what's possible in European technology, and I think that's very inspiring to a lot of people. But also the amazing aggregation of talent that they have achieved, I think, is kind of without precedent in some ways in Europe. And I think as that, as they grow, and I'm sure it's a great place to work. The founders of DeepMind are some of my investors, so I should be. I'm sure it's a great place to work. But as it grows and people move on, that creates this talent pool who are the next generation of founders. And that's super exciting, and we've definitely seen that at EF. As you say, machine learning is an area where we've focused quite a lot. We've had one reasonably big exit in that space so far, a company called Magic Pony Technology, which is a silly name, but a very memorable one. And in a way, a not dissimilar model to DeepMind. A group ultimately of 15 machine learning researchers who are applying very novel machine learning techniques to problems in video, particularly around compression, and that turned out to be very valuable. And Twitter bought that relatively early in the company's genesis, but for a large amount of money.
So I think they certainly define the word in this AI software space, but actually the most important thing that Demis did was insist that the company stay in Europe. And that is actually the change. We've been investing, I've been investing for 27 years in Europe, and earlier on when we had great companies, we were in a position when they were acquired of actually being told that the only way the deal would go through was if we persuaded basically the engineers to move to Redmond, to Cupertino, to wherever, and that means wives, children, you name it. So the sale of a company was a talent exodus, and the big change is the ability and the willingness of entrepreneurs to say, no, we can do it here. We don't need to go to the valley. We can develop the talent pool, we can develop the organizations, we can get the finance, we can do it here. And I would say that began to shift probably post-financial crisis. For the first 10 years of Amadeus' existence, we were always fighting against that. We did keep companies here. And when you go outside the AI world and you go, for example, even to GraphCore, we have a long and proud tradition of semiconductor design. ARM was formed and actually powers almost all, through its licensees, mobile devices in the world. And that was designed and developed here. And that goes back to the 90s. So this is not just recent. The big change is how do we keep the companies domiciled here? Once we do that, we will create the clusters and we will make it a really successful ecosystem.
Absolutely. No, I'm glad you add that because I think even to this day, a lot of U.S. investors will then make it a condition for investing to say, well, you've got to move over, which is, having spent time in the U.S., I can firmly say there's no magic pixie dust over there, right? Like people are the same as people here, and there's a lot of raw talent here. In some ways, it's a lot better because of some of our universities. So, I certainly agree with you on that. And having seen the other side, now I'd probably start a company here if I would start one again, because hiring is so much better and people stay with you and are loyal.
It's true.
Matt, would you have anything to add?
Yeah, not much to add there. And again, Demis is one of our investors as well. But I think whilst they've done amazing things, I think it would be hard now to start again doing what they're doing, because they went broad, they went research, they said that we're only ever going to do research, we're not going to really solve commercial problems. I don't think you could do that now in AI anymore. So I think, and where I sit with academics who just love doing research, that always makes it a little bit hard, and we always have to steer them towards, okay, where is this actually going to end up commercially? But look, it's a high quality problem to have, and I really second the fact that they're here in the UK sets a really nice example for people.
It's like, Silicon Valley grew up around Fairchild Semiconductor and Hewlett-Packard, right? Hopefully the same is very much true here. Now, with respect to what's changed, when I graduated, I went to Cambridge here, did computer science at the turn of the century, and this was not really the place to start a business, especially a software business. There are a few interesting hardware ones. That's very much no longer the case. What's changed in the last 10 to 15 years? And was this accidental or something that was planned through various policies and various organizations working really hard to do this? Maybe let's start with you, Anne, because you've got that horizon.
Yes, that's a very polite way of saying it. It's multifactorial in the sense that there were an enormous number of internet entrepreneurs in the late 90s. There was an entrepreneurial boom, but it wasn't necessarily of, as you say, the scientific talent. So several things have changed. One is the VC ecosystem, which went through a very bad time in the early 90s, almost disappeared mid-90s, and re-emerged really around that time, and has grown ever since. Now, it's had a couple of really hard knocks post-dot-com, post-financial crisis, and I think it's now in better form than I've ever seen it. And that's a consequence of not being able to attract the sort of scale of financing that allow companies to grow to real value. But that's changing, and that's absolutely changed. And the VC ecosystem has been recognized as an important instrument in the whole of economic policy. So you've seen Europe obviously start allocating capital to it. That goes back to 97 when the EIF was formed and grown and supported all of those. But the UK government also has spent a lot of time figuring out how to get angels involved, and the EIS tax system, which many of you benefit from, you may not realize, goes back to 1995 and has consistently been improved and enlarged and embraced as a mechanism of bringing capital into the early stage system in the UK. And then on top of that, the other thing that's happened, and it happens in Europe and it happens in the UK as well, is that there's a fundamental belief that seems to be cross-party, that investment in research and development actually leads to economic growth. And so you see the Horizon 2020 program, which is the EU program for research and development, actually won in the battles of the budget of the program from 2013 to 2020. It was able to get 90 billion, which was pretty impressive at the time. That was the EU side. The UK has also invested substantially more in R&D and development. And I would say that the phase we're in right now is that they understand, the politicians understand that and are allocating capital both in the EU and in the UK. But there's the issue of translation, the issue of how you then get that out into commercial products that scale, has been left to more or less the private sector to some extent. So that's why OSI is so important. And we still need help with that. I mean, there's still a gap, a financing gap as you scale these businesses. And it's when we will have not just one or even 60 unicorns, but that becomes a regular feature of our landscape, that our market cap, our made from businesses that were founded less than 25 years ago, as opposed to from the last Victorian century. Mm-hmm. That's when we'll see that we've made it, and we haven't got there yet. But all of that fabric is still here, and I hope will be preserved no matter what happens politically in the near future.
I agree with everything Anne said. I think the only thing I'd add on the sort of entrepreneur side is that if you think about this whole space as almost a talent allocation problem, like where do people go, what do they want to do? I think more people are choosing to be founders, partly because of the structural policy and tax and investment reasons that Anne mentions, but also just because fundamentally it is a better time to build deep tech businesses. And I think if I'm not saying that everyone consciously goes through these questions. If you think about someone like you graduating today, the sort of three questions I think you would ask are, okay, so if I do this, what's the upside? If I do this, what's the cost? And is there anything actually that interests me that I can do with these skills? Well, I think on the upside, we just now see the ability to scale a business globally from Europe is proven. I think that probably feels much more real than it did maybe 20 years ago. I know you didn't graduate 20 years ago, so don't worry.
That's close.
Second, I think kind of the cost really has fallen dramatically. I mean, the fact that that Amazon and Google and Microsoft will compete to give you server space rather than you having to buy a physical piece of kit. That's a huge and profound change in the calculus that people make. And the third, kind of, is there even something that interests me here? The breadth and universality of some of the techniques that we're talking about. The fact that some of the most important companies in sectors like transportation, hospitality, agriculture, which don't sound like tech problems or maybe didn't 20 years ago, now are tech problems. I think that just means that there's many more people who see it as in scope for them.
We talk about unicorns and are proud of ourselves, and I'm perpetuating that. But where are the Google scale and Facebook scale companies?
Yes.
Why are we not seeing those? And why are we getting acquired early?
That's a financing gap. It's pretty straightforward. And it's also our capital markets aren't really in love with tech the way NASDAQ is. And this is about the depth of the asset management system looking at tech. You don't have analysts who understand it. They don't buy growth, they buy dividends. I mean, it's the pensions policies, a whole series of things. We have to get our capital markets interested in tech and structurally able to support them for us to actually achieve the Google scale. It's absolutely possible, but you've got to solve the edge problem and then move on to the next problem, and that's what we're doing. And I would hope that maybe it won't be in the top 5 market cap in the world, but let's at least get to 10 billion now and move on.
So
from
famously, Mark Zuckerberg had all these offers, 5, 10 billion, and he just turned and said, "No, I'm building something bigger."
Yeah.
Is that an American perspective, or do we have very much that here as well? As in people, given the right encouragement around them, will wait for the big outcome.
But he was doing it in a context where he had access to capital. I mean, that's the point. He can make that decision because he knew he could get the private finance to keep going. I'm sure an equivalent person here would have the same attitude and ambition if they felt the trade-off was possible. We have to make that trade-off possible for that very ambitious entrepreneur. I mean, maybe Nigel will be one. That would be fantastic.
Fingers crossed.
One of the things that perhaps is not well known is that and we'll hear from Sally later, but our life sciences VC ecosystem has actually done rather better than our IT. And there you are absolutely seeing unicorns being built and surviving in the European environment. Awesome. So we've really got to just solve the next edge problem and then move on. But as you say, people are people the world over. The only thing that I would say as a word of caution to all of us is that exactly the same factors that make Europe competitive with the US now exist in India, Turkey, Indonesia. So we are now no longer just competing with the US, and we really must recognize that. I mean, obviously China, but China tends to be rather insular. Those same factors are affecting entrepreneurs around the world. So we better use all of the tools that we have to make our companies successful.
Yeah, makes sense. Yesterday, I think it was Eric Schmidt was talking about AI in China. He said, these Chinese people are good, right? Like, don't underestimate them. And I think
absolutely.
It was like several months ago, Vladimir Putin said, the country that leads the world AI will rule the world, which is a very Russian way of looking at things. But so what is it? Just kind of final questions. What is it that it'll take for us to stay ahead in Europe, or at least be in the lead? You mentioned access to capital and attitudes are changing. What else is there? So maybe let's talk about universities. Let's talk about early stage encouragement. Matt?
I mean, I think one of the nice things Europe has is it has a diversity of thoughts. There's a lot of people trying a lot of different things, and I think that's an important piece of it, because I don't think no one has nailed AI yet. They've got lots of good tools for solving nice problems, and they look like they could scale well, but we don't know that yet. So I think that diversity will be important, but that's not a thing we need to change. But that's the reason we should be hopeful. But I think one of the things that might help to focus that thought on building powerful outcomes rather than segmenting it into tighter and tighter fields where you don't have to compete with other academics would be kind of grand challenges and prizes. And I think DARPA has done a good job of this kind of stuff in the US, and I just don't feel like we have done that as well here in Europe and galvanized people into attacking problems which will have big impacts. So maybe that would be my suggestion.
Government perhaps has a role to play there.
Yeah, maybe, yeah.
Well, I think continuing to build on the strengths of our universities, I mean, I really do think it's extraordinary for a country that is relatively small to have so many genuinely world-leading universities, particularly in the spaces that we're all talking about. And I think it's amazing what OSI is doing in Oxford, but we probably need 5 of those, and in fact we can have 5 of those, which is amazing. And I think that, to me, feels like, I think one of the big priorities for this whole sector is to make sure that we continue to be, the magnet for the world's best talent. I think you walk around Oxford, Cambridge, Imperial, UCL, Warwick, Edinburgh. It is the magnet for the world's best talent, and we just need to keep
ETH in Zurich,
ETH in Zurich,
TUM
absolutely, absolutely,
across Europe. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So last question really quickly, because I think we're a little over time. So to those in the audience today who are thinking of starting, joining, or funding a startup, what is your message to them? What are the things they should keep in mind about Europe today?
Oh, gosh.
Maybe inspire people a bit.
I was going to say, well, I mean, basically, build a team quickly. I mean, I think that's the thing that speed of action is, if there's one difference between Silicon Valley and Europe, I think we are still slower at the speed of action, which is both the hiring and the partnerships and so if we can increase the clock speed by which things fail fast and then move on or build something fast, and that's the thing that I would say I'd pass on to an entrepreneur. The rest of the system is there to support you. Just get out over your skis.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say 2 things. One is that getting started beats getting ready. I don't think there is any readiness as a concept for an entrepreneur isn't one. I don't know any good entrepreneur who felt they were ready at the start. So if you feel that that's what you ought to be doing, then just do it. And the second is our applications are open now, joinef.com. So
yeah, and I'd just say that there's a lot of money about, particularly at the very early stage at the moment. Make sure that you're really convinced by your idea. If you're not convinced, you won't convince anyone else. You might be able to get some money for it, but you'll just waste your life. If you're not sure about it, join someone else's idea that you are sure about until you get your own good one, and then you will become more ready, and you'll get better at spotting things.
Thanks very much to all 3 of you for joining us. Follow Amadeus, EF, and OSI on Twitter to get more insight long term. And thank you to those of you in the audience for joining us today. Thank you.